Everyone, is Hydro Pump here. Today I got my top 8 deck list, deck profile video for the Ribbit tournament that I topped. We got played KristyaSworn here, and I have my guest today, my teammate on Team Ring of Destruction, Prostorm here. He's going to do the deck profile with us.
Hey, what's up?
So Prostorm and I have been kind of working on this KristyaSworn deck for I don't know, a while now, or maybe like we talk about a lot of decks, but we've been talking about KristyaSworn lately, and I thought it would be a good time to play the deck and bring it out for a tournament. Uh, do you have anything you want us to add on to that?
No, not really. I mean, obviously we noticed Vayu was winning a lot and wanted to try to pick something that would do well into Vayu, but also Black Wings and Frogs, and thought a lot of people have been sleeping on this deck. So took it for a bit of our own spin, and it's a bit different than most lists that you see, and I guess we'll get into the details in this video.
Yeah, I can agree that I think this deck's been slept on as well. People kind of forgot it from like a year and or 2 years ago when it first came out, and then everyone was playing, and then it kind of died off. But yeah, we can just jump right into it. First, I'll just kind of go through like the life form monsters, but Judgment Dragon, obviously the boss monster. Play 2 of him, obviously, and we got 3 Lila. Lila is probably like one of the better life form monsters to start off with, just because you can just throw it out there, and if you have a way to protect it, puts your opponent in an awkward position where they don't want to say in their 12 trap cards, which is good with us, and then you can potentially mill another 3 cards at the next end phase. But yeah, anything to add on with Lila, you think?
No, not much.
Yeah,
I mean, Lila's pretty broken with some of the trap text that we have, and it's definitely one of your best summons if you want proactive milling.
yeah. I guess something that's a little annoying is that just playing the 3 of names, they you tend to see two of them in the grave when you kind of just need names for JD, so that's a little annoying, but it's kind of worth it with Lila. And then we played 3 Reiko. We're also playing hamsters as well, but Reiko is still pretty good in this deck. Just get the mills going and pop cards. That's Lila and Reiko are pretty like the proactive life form monsters that just kind of destroy things and mill, so it's pretty nice. And something that's different with KristyaSworn is that we played 3 Wolf. Not most builds don't even play Wolf, but we decided just to play 3 just because we think it's still a really strong monster, and then on top of that, it's a Light Swarm monster. And cause just like simply milling it, this gives your opponent a headache with it when you're just like getting a free card. So, you want to add anything else
Yeah, I
onto that?
mean, yeah, I mean, I think Wolf is incredibly, crazy.
Yeah,
Obviously, when you mill it, but um, if you look at what we did end up cutting, we cut Necro and Plague, and there's some thought behind this because I've noticed in most of my games, anytime I drew the Necro or the Plague, it was pretty much an auto loss. And obviously it's nice to mill Necro and Plague, but I think it's better to mill Wolf. So in those 2 slots, I think playing 2 Wolf over Necro and Plague makes a lot of sense from my point of view. The Wolf just also, of course, synergizes with Recharge, so yeah, because sometimes you notice your recharges are actually dead. And Wolf being another name is also quite nice. Sometimes you're milling and you want to hit the 4 names, but you're milling Necro, Plague, which, aren't bad mills, but they don't accomplish your goal of getting to JD. And yeah, the extra deck, Plague is nice to go into extra sometimes, but I think in over 100 matches where I was testing with this deck, I only used the extra deck like 4 or 5 times, usually to make Mistworm or Brionac to bounce myself to stop deck out. But it was very rare, and yeah, none of the extra deck monsters do too much in my opinion, because if your main goal is to summon JD and clear the field, you don't really need anything else. So yeah, and the other points are, Plague walks into Oppression, Plague and Necro get hit by DDV, So yeah, if I'm siding them out against Blackwings and Vayu, might as well start with Wolves in their place. And just noticed Melding Wolves tremendously tilted the matchup favor towards Lightsworn. So yeah, those are just some arguments for playing
Yeah.
Wolf over other Garnets like Plague and Necro.
Something that's kind of like understated too is that it's a light monster, so it, it works with Beckoning Light if it's just kind of like chilling in the grave, whereas Plague and Necro, like, you may not have enough light monsters to get the Beckoning Light you need, so there's that too. And
Yeah, but you would never want to Beckoning back a Wolf unless
no,
you had a recharge. But
I'm just
yeah.
saying, like, if you had like 3 cards in hand and you
Sure,
have,
sure,
yeah,
yeah.
that's like pretty niche situation, but it matters to some extent. But yeah, Wolf was it was pretty good this tournament. I only really had like 1 or 2 bad hands, like actual bad hands in the whole tournament, and it was 8 rounds of Swift, and then I played top 8, so like the deck was pretty consistent and didn't really mind Wolf at all.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
yeah,
you'll probably go through this in another video in terms of your replays and how often you bricked on multiple Wolves, but I feel like you definitely converted Wolf sometimes too with a recharge, right? And
oh yeah,
if you replace the Wolves in those situations with like a Necro or Plague, you probably just lose the game.
yeah. I think it was my top 8 match. I had like a Arceus milling, and like Arceus saved me, but then what really saved me was milling Wolf, because then it just put another monster on the field. If I just had Arceus still, then I probably would have lost that game, but I ended up winning somehow. That was that first game, but we can go see that over the replays when I make that replay video. Yeah, but it's on to the other life forms. We got Lumina, obviously. We got 1 Jane and 1 Garroth, and then 1 Arceus. Those are like all
Yeah,
the
so
one of Lightsworns.
yeah, so I mean, a lot of lists have cut Garroth, which I guess makes sense if you're not on Wolf.
Yeah,
But Garroth is just so cracked, especially if you open Lumina Garroth, and I think you opened that a couple of times, right? Like you open that, and even if you don't draw off Garroth, just getting 2 more mills in pretty much guarantees JD's live, and it's also just a nice body to beat over things. Can run over Hamster. The Jane, when I first built the list, I thought about playing 2 Jane, mainly because Jane gets over some problematic cards, like mostly Cloaky Drago. I started thinking, if I summon Jane and it walks like they don't have bottomless, do I really want to swing into D-Prison? Because if you swing in Prison, you're losing a name and you're losing end phase mills. So that's why I kind of decided to cut down from 2 Jane to 1 and play 2 Hamster instead, just to be a bit more defensive. Obviously, there's pros and cons with that, but I just figured, so many decks are playing 2 to 3 Prison. You really don't want to be, if your summon lands, you probably don't want to be swinging into back row.
yeah.
Just even if you hit a right kill, right? Like you're missing out on your end phase mills. So yeah, that's why I
It's
thought.
like hopeful to play too and like have it work where you're actually
Yeah,
beating
I
over
mean,
things.
2 would be good against any Cloaky Drago list,
Yeah, but
but
it's kind of like,
they're not really too popular right now, and yeah.
and Drago's only really matters like mostly against like the like Dragon Turbo can get Drago out and try to lock you out, but you're more concerned about like the disaster or flip
Yeah,
dragon
yeah,
because they have 3 Dragos. A lot more common to see 3 of that. But
for sure.
and then my boy Arceus here was pretty nice in my top 8 game. Kind of saved me just because of the non-targeting effect. And then this comboing him with Honest was just pretty crazy. I was able to like use 2 Honest and then Beckoning Light back Honest, and he was just like sticking around on the field. And I'm pretty sure my opponent had like brain control in hand, so like any other Lightsworn, I just would have lost. So
For sure. Yeah, even in testing, when we ran the Vayu and KristyaSworn matchup a lot, I think we did over 10 matches in one day.
yeah,
Every time Arcus landed, it was so annoying because, outside of Mirror Force, Torrential, um, like Vayu's only way of getting over it's by battles. So when you have Honest, and obviously I guess DDV, but Arcus and Honest was just so clutch every time it happened, and yeah, it's
and you
really
can also
annoying.
just like you can just smack into your opponent's set monster. If it's a Raikou, then they can't pop anything. So that's pretty
For
nice too.
sure, for sure.
And it also works pretty good with Wolf if you happen to mill it. Then you have two Lightsworn monsters all of a sudden that you can't target, and Wolf's obviously bigger, so it's a little annoying. And we also have like some defensive cards to help Arceus too. And then obviously Lumina's Lumina, so gotta play that one. And then yeah, those cards
Yeah,
were
I
great.
guess you know, we didn't play Aaron. I noticed Aaron's pretty much obviously it mills 3, but it's such a Garnet. 1600's a terrible stat line. It's basically running like a Gladiator Beast the quest. If you think about things that people set, the only matchup where I think Aaron is decent in is, you know, frogs if they brick on dupes, but you're probably winning if they're setting dupes anyways, and it's a pretty good matchup, I think. And zombies, and yeah, obviously you want Aaron for zombies, but that's like one match up out of like 5 or 6 relevant meta ones, and Aaron's like pretty terrible in all the other ones. So yeah, just decided to cut down on her.
Yeah.
And Shire's another one that's most people run, and obviously Shire's great because you can charge for Shire to get Herald live instantly. But we just didn't want to run another DDV target, another brick that doesn't mill 3 to begin with, and
It's
yeah,
just kind of weak too.
like yeah, like what kind of want to minimize the bricks when you're playing 3 wolves. It just felt like cutting Shire didn't hurt us too much, especially
Yeah.
because our fairy package wasn't as big as other lists. I guess I didn't preface this, but in terms of describing the deck, it's, you know, other KristyaSworn lists are pretty focused on dropping Kristya. If you watch the replays, I feel like they actually drop Kristya more than they drop JD. Obviously, I experimented with similar lists, you know, like 3 Herald, 3 Kristya, Soul of Purity, that kind of stuff. Even trying like, you know, Purple Light to stop DDV. But I found like relying on Kristya as a win con wasn't as reliable, just because you still have to play through back row, and something like a Raikou or D Prison just is really annoying for your plans.
Yeah.
Especially because if you end up over milling, you have to rely on seeing other cards like Soul to fix your graveyard. So this deck doesn't really focus on turboing out Kristya, if that makes sense. Like JD's still the main win con, and Kristya there is just kind of like support. Yeah, and we can get into more details later.
Yeah.
But I'd say it's more of a Lightsworn list that has a small fairy package to stop crackbacks.
Yeah, and I guess we can actually the way my bracket went, Aaron actually kind of would have been nice against the decks I played against. Is like I played against Sabers and stuff, so actually would have been kind of nice there. But overall, I don't think it's totally necessary to have it. And like the Shire, the Elder Jane, like, and even like a third Celestia when you can get the Celestia in a second. But like, we kind of replaced these guys too with the wolves, so like you're not having so many normal summon Lightsworn monsters, because like the regular KristyaSworn list just has like a ton, like all your Lightsworn monsters are just normal summons, whereas, you know, you can kind of get a little aggressive with the wolf mills and, you know, kind of just overwhelm them that way too. And another thing is that I think with, you know, this deck is that you want to focus more on the Lightsworn engine to get to your fairy engine rather than having like such a big fairy engine, that because like none of your fairy cards are starters. You kind of just need the Lightsworn stuff to do their thing, and then the fairies come into play. So that's kind of like makes more sense to me to like focus more on the Lightsworn engine to get going, and then, you know, the fairies can come finish off the game. So anyways, yeah, we can talk about Celestia now. We decided to play 2 instead of 3. I know 3 has been popular in the past, but we decided to go with 2 just so it's not so clunky. It is a fairy. That's like the one Lightsworn we were playing that is a fairy. We decided not to play the third one. And we're also playing 2 hamsters, so we're not really focused like trying to force the Celestia play. 2 Celestia was fine. I saw it when I needed it. And then like if you happen to mill a wolf off a recharge, you can just slam this first turn if you happen to get that play off. So it's pretty good there. Anything on Celestia before we round up the Lightsworns?
Not really. I kind of like playing 2 and not 3.
Yeah.
Because You know, if you're on three Celestia, three Wolf,
Yeah, it
you,
gets
you
pretty
start
clunky.
getting some tricky hands. So yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it too. I saw it when I needed it, and you can always beckon and light it back, so it seemed pretty nice. I guess onto the fairy stuff. Oops, this is that pile over there. So yeah, we have the 2 Honest, the 2 Kristya, and the 2 Orange Light. Um, and then we also have the 2 Celestia that kind of go with that as well. So these are all the fairies we play. I kind of just enjoyed the smaller fairy package. Again, you're not turboing the Kristya as much. Like I saw some of Masha's replays and she was just like slamming Kristya a lot. But again, like you said, like Kristya isn't all that good if you still have to play through bottomless, deep prisons, and all that. And there was a couple times even for me, it's like, okay, I finally got to summon the Kristya, and then they're like, oh, I still have to play through the back row. So it gets a little awkward with Kristya, but overall still a really good card. And then we also didn't play the we did not play I guess the other notable fairies we didn't play. We didn't play the 3rd Kristya, the 3rd Orange Light, or like any Soul Purity Light. We didn't play these cards. I guess Wolf kind of replaces Soul in a way, so it replaces like the Plague, Necro, Soul, but Soul's we didn't really like the card because it didn't really synergize with anything aside from Kristya, just fixing the grave. And if you're not playing so many fairies to where you need to get stuff out of the grave to get the 4 fairies, then you don't really have to worry about it as much. So that's
Yeah, like when I cut down on the fairy numbers, I noticed I rarely overmilled, and I really liked that aspect, where I could land a Celestia and mill 4 and be fairly confident I'm not gonna go over. And yeah, like, you know, I've probably done over 100 matches with this kind of skeleton by now, and I never found the fairy count to be an issue. Rarely bricked on opening Kristya because we only play 2 and not 3. And heralds weren't you know, that dead. They were usually quite live when you needed it. And yeah, for me, like, this number of fairies felt fine, just because like Hydra said, I rarely relied on slamming Kristya early and trying to ride that to victory because it wasn't working in practice. And yeah, the reason why I cut Soul was Soul is great mid to late game, but that's contingent on you reaching your game plan of milling and milling like enough names and fairies. Like a lot of times I noticed watching replays or even when I tried it myself, if you mill like, you know, you mill some names, but you don't want to banish them because that turns JD off, but it's your only way to get Soul online, so those are like pretty awkward situations. So as an opponent, if I see you banishing names just to get Soul online to make like a Synchro 8, I'm pretty happy because that's a relatively weak play for this deck.
yeah.
And yeah, most of the time when the deck loses, it's either because you can't out oppression, you got hit by DDV, or you couldn't get your mills going. Like, they have a fast start, they bottomless your first summon, they compulse or do whatever, and you're stuck with a bunch of boss monsters, no graveyard setup, and you lose. So Soul wasn't really helping me achieve my game plan of milling, so that's why we decided to cut it for some other cards which work really well with the Lightstorm monsters. I don't know if you want to show it on screen now, but for example, we played 2 main deck Threatening Roar,
Yeah.
and that card was just insane every time I saw it and activated it. It's just goes so crazy across so many different matchups. And yeah, T-Roar was just, in all of my games, it was always good, and I'm sure Hydro in your tournament run, it performed really well as well.
Yeah, Threatening Roar was like one of the main deck MVPs, so it just kept you alive. Like, again, we're not playing Necro, but you know, I guess something that's weird with the Lightsworn decks in general, just playing the Lightsworn engine, you kind of need to find a balance of like good mills and just good cards to draw instead of like mill. So like, you know, Necro Garden is obviously good to mill, but you know, you don't want to draw it. Threatening Roar doesn't do anything when you mill it, but it's great to draw. And same thing with Wolf, like At least you can do something with Wolf. You can recharge it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I guess to put another way, I'd rather draw Threatening Roar than mill Necro, if that makes
yeah.
sense,
So that's the good way
right?
to look at it.
Yeah, because Threatening Roar makes Lila, like turn 1 Lila, basically into a Cold Wave. You don't want to set anything behind. When you T-Roar there, you basically get 6 mils off. It makes Celestia better. It just, if you open, Lumina Gareth, that's like you're milling half your deck by turn 2. Threatening Roar is also
Yeah.
like great defensively. Works with the sideboard as well with sweepers like Vortex, so you don't die to, Dragon Turbo. Like I decked someone out before with Threatening Roar. That was pretty funny. And yeah, it's just
Essentially, like it's like a like
not taking damage. Yeah, not taking damage is crazy. It makes your Gold Sark better as well.
yeah.
A lot of people play Sark, but then they complain about dying because they don't have defense. Like Threatening Roar just makes Sark so much more consistent. And the other thing is just Threatening Roar feels weird because people overvalue like card advantage, and Threatening Roar is inherent -1. But you have to understand with this deck, it's trying to do an unfair thing, which is drop JD. So
Yeah. It
like
doesn't
I've
matter how
taken a
many
lot of
cards you
negs.
got.
Yeah, I've taken quite a few negs before with T-Roar, but it's like, okay, I T-Roar, but then Lila can pop something again. It makes my Celestia alive, and then I might be down 2 cards, but then I just drop JD. Oh, like I resolve Gold Sark for a Cold Wave, and then I drop JD, and it's just like, yeah, the negs didn't matter because I achieved my game plan and I'm winning now. You know?
Yeah. There's like times where like in our testing, anyways, like it's like okay, you Gold Sark or something. For JD, I'm like, okay, well, I need to summon like all my guys with like black wings. You summon all my guys and start swinging, and you like T-roar me like the turn before you add JD. I'm like, well, I just put everything I got on the field, and then it's just gonna get blown up next turn because I try to go for the game shot. So like it kind of punishes your opponent there, and then like roar in general is just kind of like in this deck you're pretty much skipping your opponent's turn unless they have some way to generate more advantage like Black Whirlwinds or Synchro into Stardust Dragon. Like you're not really doing a whole lot if you're negating their battle phase. So yeah, the card was great. It was like one of my favorite cards in the deck. So yeah. Uh, so that was
I,
Roar, and then that was the Fairy Engine too. Unless you want
yeah, yeah. I
anything.
guess the last monster we didn't cover was Gores, right? Well, Trooper
Uh,
and Gores.
yeah. So I guess we briefly. Oh yeah. I guess Honest too is obviously pretty.
Yeah,
Honest is
obviously
honestly
Trigger too.
nice, but
Yeah.
and then I guess we can. We didn't talk about Hamster too much, and then we had Car Trooper and Gores to round out the monsters.
Yeah, I mean, Gores is nice. Like, once again, figured in a value meta, like, and Frog meta, Gores is a card you kind of want. And it's just, it works with Gold Sark. And, yeah,
Yeah,
like, I guess there's debate if you want to play, like, a Plague in that place. But I thought Gores was quite strong because it reduces your weakness to DDV. I think there is a game where, obviously you lost it, but Gores kept you in that game because you got DDV'd. And Gores kept you in that game for like 3 or 4 more turns than otherwise. So
yeah,
unfortunately, couldn't draw out of it, but it was just great to be there, I think.
yeah. Gores didn't, for my tournament run, it wasn't too amazing just because I don't know. I just didn't draw it much when I needed it. It would have been nice to see against the VU opponents, but like I played against like 2 X Sabers, and honestly, Gores doesn't really do a whole lot in that matchup. So in general, because they can just take everything out of your hand. Um, and there's like a few other things too, but it's a great card. Obviously, it's good to have in your hand. It's just more defense as well, and then the token's light for honest if you happen to get to that, and then card troopers like the honorary Lightsworn monster, so it's usually a staple in Lightsworn decks, and you have the hamsters just to get to your Raikou, just more consistently, and it's a little defensive, so I guess like Black Wings, Hero Beat, Vayu, they just generally don't want to see that card. So yeah, that was like kind of it for the utility monsters. You want to add anything else before we go to the rest of the
No,
list?
I think that's. Oh, I
Cool.
guess finally, just to sum up on the monster side, when I was building this list, I was really trying to minimize the weakness to DDV.
Yeah.
If you count the DDV targets, I think so. There's 2 Herald, 2 Honest, Trooper, 2 Hamster, 3 Raikou, Arcus, and Lumina. 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's 12 targets, which I think normal lists play around 16 targets. So 12 targets
Yeah, it's
pre-siding,
12.
and you can and then you can cut down like 2
You're also
like
got
a
like side
hamster.
like hamsters and stuff
Yeah,
going second.
like going second, you cut the Hamster and Raikou, and so like you get the DDV targets down to like 9 or 10ish, which is quite reasonable. Obviously, it's not foolproof, but
Yeah.
um,
I think I
it's
got
like
like kind of lucky against my Vayu opponents because like I went second, they get the Greffer ditch, and then summon Armwing, have deck dev turn 1, like 2 games. Like each opponent had that in one of their games. But yeah, I got unfortunate in one of my games where it's like I had like 3 small guys like Card Trooper, like Honest, and then maybe a Reiko, and my opponent did the like deck dev thing, and my next card was Herald, so it's like I could have technically Herald the Greffer to stay alive, but it didn't quite work out that well.
yeah, I was just unlucky. Like
Yeah,
you got high rolled, you got hit for like 4 cards or something.
yeah.
Like 4 out of like 9 cards in the whole deck that get hit by DDV. So it's just got high rolled.
Yeah.
Nothing you can do about it.
So that was a little unfortunate. That was like how I lost like 2 out of 3 games against my VU opponents. Or 2 out of 4, yeah, 2 out of 4 games. Okay, well, yeah, that rounds out the monsters. And again, I don't think I mentioned this, but you had like a lot more games with this deck than I did. I just kind of like decided you and I did like a lot of Tyrio with this deck, but you obviously did like majority of the testing, and we tested some as well. So you're a little more experienced with it than I am.
Yeah, sure.
You're a
Yeah, I guess
grinder.
can move on to the
Yeah,
spells
yeah,
now.
yeah. So
Most it's pretty standard.
yeah, so you got charge, 3 recharge.
Nothing to explain
Yeah,
there.
those cards were broken because I had a couple games. Like if I open like recharge, charge, I had like maybe like 3 games in the tournament, maybe 4. I think I just like won the next turn, which was crazy. And then 2 gold sark. I guess some lists are cutting gold sark, but it's pretty good because we have threatening roar and just like more defense in general. So it's just like easy to find your good cards, and it's kind of, I guess it's easy to underestimate this card, but it's just like so good to have to find
And
your
like
power things.
a lot of people don't Sark for the right things usually as well. Like in a lot of replays when I watch them, people almost always slam dunk Sark for JD when it's wrong. Like they might have only like 1 starter, and if it gets Caius or if you don't know well, then your JD's like there's no avenue to getting it online.
Yeah,
Like usually when I play the deck, I'm Sarking for like charge or recharge. If my hand has like 3 or 4 Lightsworn names, or sorry, 2 or 3 Lightsworn summons, it's kind of cloggy. Kind of feel like going for recharge there, especially if you have like beckoning, so you don't mind if you mill the bosses because you can tutor them back. And yeah, we are also main decking Cold Wave, which is
yeah.
insane.
So we
And
had cold
so
wave, heavy, and my bites for the other spells.
yeah, and like Cold Wave is insane. I would never cut that from this deck
Oh
unless I was
yeah,
playing against someone that had skill drain or light imprisoning. So the reason why Cold Wave is crazy is like you drop JD after you Cold Wave. Obviously, it turns off their traps and oppression and whatnot, but more importantly, it stops a lot of the crackbacks. Like you're blocking Miracle, you're blocking Brain, you're blocking Burial. So Cold Wave just almost ends the game. And sorry, I didn't mention this earlier, but another reason why I added the small Herald package back is because if you drop J, like in the traditional pure Lightsworn lists, when you drop JD and it's not lethal, you're really at the mercy of your opponent. Like your opponent gets to do whatever they want on their turn, and there's so many ways to crack back on JD. It could be like Sidra Caius, Sirocco, Armed Wing Pump, Shura Kalut, Cataster, Dark Armed. Like there's so many ways to crack back. Whereas first of all, if you can drop Kristya alongside JD, that's like almost always game. But if you can't do that and you beckoning back Herald Protection, like Herald Protection with JD is it's lights out. And if you have Cold Wave on top of that,
Yeah.
that's like
They just
the
can't do
golden
anything.
setup, right? Like you can't play Brain, you can't set Mirror Force, you can't set like Road or My Body. You can't play like your monster effects.
Yeah.
It's just yeah, it's crazy. So that's like the setup we're always trying to go for, and so that's why like at the beginning of the video I talked about how this deck is more focused on JD and using the fairy stuff to protect it. Yeah, I think that's the main advantage that the fairy stuff offers over playing pure. Because when you're playing pure, you're really at the mercy of your opponent cracking back, and you're so screwed when they crack back.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just an aside on why Cold Wave was broken.
Yeah.
Storm is obviously Storm, and that's broken. And I guess my body's been insane. Like every time I played with it, it's you block bottomless on your summon, which is huge.
Yeah.
Because if they bottomless your first summon and you're going second, you pretty much lose the game.
Yeah.
And my body also comes clutch when you're, it hits Road on Celestia, which is insane. It hits Ab Zero when you go Celestia or JD.
Yeah.
It hits
Stardust.
Stardust.
Yeah.
Like in some of our testing, I'd flip Raikou, and you're on Black Wings and you had Stardust. I go Raikou target Stardust, and then you're forced to negate, right? Then I just my body, and then I drop Celestia, and like the game just
Yeah.
changes.
I got
It's
cooked.
pretty crazy. Yeah. So my body's pretty insane. Obviously, the life point cost is a bit annoying, but I have Threatening Roar to mitigate that somewhat.
Yeah. You have
Oh,
Roar,
and yeah,
Honest, and
and the other thing with my body is you block Lightning Vortex, which is really insane against Dragon Turbo, and you block Herald in the
Black
mirror.
Rose.
Yeah, you block Herald and JD in the mirror, which is also pretty insane. So, love the card. Yeah, I guess it hits Gemini Spark, Hero Blast, all the summon stops, Torrential as well.
Yeah.
Like
Mirror
I
Force
noticed,
Torrential.
yeah, like
It's a really
sometimes we
flexible
go,
card.
yeah, like when you open Lumina Gyarados and you mill crazy, they set a bunch of back row. Like my body just lets you play ignorantly into Torrential. Like you go Lila, they go Torrential, then you hit another card. Like the game's over. So yeah, the
Yeah.
card's insane.
Yeah. I quite enjoyed it. I guess maybe in this tournament run was it like super impactful. I don't recall seeing it a whole lot. But and then Heavy Storm was okay, and then Cold Wave, and Threatening Roar were like my MVPs this tournament. Those cards were crazy. I think my top 8 match, I like top deck Cold Wave when I had Dad in hand, and he had like Stardust bottomless is set, and I was like, this Cold Wave just cleared his field, and it was pretty crazy. So
Yeah, you had JD,
yeah,
not
yeah.
that.
Oh, did I say Dad? I meant JD. Yeah.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
my side deck Dad. I don't know, joking. Yeah, and then I guess the last 2 cards to round out the list was 2 Beckoning Light. Pretty standard to play. I guess you can
Yeah, it's
technically
just
play a
really
third,
insane.
but
Mhm.
it's kind of a little overkill.
No, I find 3 to be really bricky
Yeah.
because you never want to open 2. Like there's some games where I'd open 2 Beckoning, 2 Wolf, 2 Celestia. It's just really bad. I think that happened only twice out of like 120 matches or
Yeah.
something, like 2 games. So
And I enjoyed
uh,
the 2. It was
yeah,
pretty good. And then we didn't play Call the Haunted either, just because. Well, I guess Call the Haunted is a little
yeah,
better with 3 Christia build, just so that you can get that call play.
yeah.
But
But I still think it's really win more. I think
yeah,
Call is so situational. Like first of all, you have to know, which isn't always guaranteed. When you're going second, it's really weak into oppression. It's weak into crow. It's weak into the removal. Like when you have Raikou, Kais, or whatever, it makes all of that pretty good. And yeah, if you're calling back a Christia, obviously you can win a game against Dragon Turbo. But
yeah,
if the Christia gets removed from the field, you're dead drawing like Christia that's not live, and just feels really bad. And yeah, the same reasons why we're not playing stuff like Glorious Illusion. I think that card's really bad. Once again, like it's making your much weaker to oppression, MST, Dust Tornado,
heavy.
Crow, and yeah, I've just seen too many replays of people stuck with these bad cards when they just need a mill. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like instead of Glorious
They're
Illusion,
not really
Lila,
they're not really chainables either, so they're just kind of
yeah, yeah, like instead of Glorious Illusion Lila, like threatening for Lila, it's like it changes the game in my opinion. And I guess my final point is when your main deck is all chainables, it makes post-board non-chainable cards like Mirror Force really strong. Because if I'm playing game one and all I see are Beckonings and T-Roars, there's no chance I'm like hitting them with removal in game two. Like no chance. No one good would ever do that, right?
Yeah.
So then it makes Mirror Force insane. And you had a pretty juicy Mirror Force and
Like top
in
8.
one of your matches. Yeah, yeah. So that's a cool thing about it.
Yeah, I was able to Mirror Force for like 3. Kind of wish he summoned the Iron Wing just to go for a game, but he just didn't risk it. But yeah, Beckoning Light at 2 and Threatening Roar was great. Didn't really miss Call of Haunted, and yeah, that kind of rounds up the main deck. I mean, you can probably fly through like the extra, because honestly, we didn't really go into it.
Yeah, the extra super standard.
Just like Armion, Catastor, Urquizus, Tempest Magician, Brionic, Goyo. I think these were the only 2 I made of the whole tournament, Brionic and Goyo. Brionic won me a couple games, and I think Goyo, I don't even remember what I did with Goyo. I think I took his Card Trooper and milled with it, so that was kind of cool. And then the rest of the stuff I didn't make either. We got Ancient Secret Wyvern, Black Rose, Stardust, Colossal Dot Ruler, Avenging Knight Parseth, Light End Dragon, Mistworm, and Chimera Tech. Didn't make any of these, but
standard.
yeah.
I mean, they're all really underpowered, right? Outside of Brio, like outside of Brionac and maybe Goyle, you don't really need any of the others.
Yeah, like you have your boss monsters in the main deck, and that's kind of what you're focusing on, and everything else is kind of like situational.
Yeah, like I think in my 100 plus matches, you know, even when I was on Plague, I rarely used extra deck. Like the occasional Mistworm is nice, Brionac is nice. Tempest for game comes up like, you know, once in 100 matches.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just really feels underpowered compared to your main deck bosses. And
yeah, even if you're like, if you're playing like Soul Impurity Light, like it's like, okay, you have to, I don't know, I feel like you just have to like, waste so much resources just to make a synchro. You have to go like
yeah, I mean my
one
whole
or
stance
2
on
to
yeah,
make
I
a
mean my
synchro.
whole stance on Soul stems from my time playing with fairies. Like if you're gonna like none of the level 8s do too much. Obviously Avenging Knight Parshat has some unique kills if you can get back honest. But I just never really like relying on those game plans.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just like trying to set up Cold Wave JD, but obviously you can't do that every game. But yeah, like instead of having all of that, the wolf pressure actually gets you to a lot of games. Like sometimes when you're just goldfishing the deck in solo mode, you're running through like scenarios. You don't realize how much damage stacks up quickly when you honest with Lila and you mill a wolf, and that's basically 3/4 of their life already.
Yeah.
And it's insane.
Yeah.
So
Cyber
I find like
Dragon
you don't really
strong.
need those other win cons. I think JD itself is good enough, and between the Honest's Wolf Celestia pressure, that's enough to close most games.
Yeah. Okay, well that rounds out the extra deck, and then we go on to the sideboard, and it's kind of straightforward, but we can explain a couple things. I have these goofy consecrated lights that I drew. I drew some art on them like from like 15 years ago, but that's what I got right now. I didn't play against any Blackwings in this tournament, but that's what it's ideally for. It's still pretty good, and it's a fairy, so you can just like take out your heralds, put some consecrated lights in its place, and then you can kind of just lock your opponent out of the game if you get this to stick for a couple turns.
Yeah, when I was testing, it was mostly on the ladder, and there's a lot of Blackwing players like above 1,000, right? So it's pretty good testing. And just Consecrate just destroyed them every single time, and they knew it was coming, right? They'd side your Sidra, Snowman, what have you, but it's just Consecrate is too much. And our teammate NB, he destroyed like 2 really good Blackwing players consecutively. Like he got Duck Tracy and a True Hero. And yeah, the card's just nasty. It's just, yeah, would never play less than 3.
It's kind of like one of the only cards that really like can blow out Blackwing by itself, which is kind of funny.
For sure.
Okay, so that was Orb, and then we played 2 Lightning Vortex. Vortex was okay. I think maybe there was like game where my opponent had like Vandy's Fiend and stuff like that, or just like some kind of floodgate monster, and I was able to take it out post board.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
mostly for frogs. I mean, I wouldn't even necessarily do 2 for frogs, maybe
yeah,
if it was hero frogs, but it's mostly for, you know, siding 1 going second against Vayu is okay, just because you can reduce a lot of their pressure. It's insane versus Dragon Turbo, especially with Threatening Roar.
yeah. The Drago
Um,
decks.
yeah, just because, you know, I don't think Turbo's incentivized to keep in Storm and Trunade. So a lot of times they'll commit into your set back row. You just T-roar them and then Vortex, and that's obviously insane.
Yeah. Uh, I saw the card a couple times and it was okay. So didn't play
Yeah, and
against any
it's insane
Dragon
in the
Turbo.
mirror as well.
Oh yeah, just
Like,
anything that tries to
yeah,
floodgate you, you can just like wipe them out. So that's pretty nice.
yeah, like if they go, you know, JD, Kristya, you just T-roar, and then you have Vortex to clean up.
Yeah.
It's really good.
We had 2 Soul Release. I don't think I saw this card at all, but I brought it against Frogs and Quick Draw opponent. Again, I just didn't see them, but you know, it's pretty good against those matchups.
Yeah, it's mostly just for frogs, and I guess it covers the mirror as well. But it's a blowout against frogs, and I think it's much better than Mask of Restrict. Just because many reasons, right? First of all, Mask of Restrict, you have to set it. It loses to Regeki Break, Phoenix Wing Blast, Unifrog. It doesn't stop the hero engine, and Silver Release, of course, you play from hand. So frogs have no way to stop you from playing this. So you just, if you remove both Treeborns, like you're not losing the game. And if you hit their hero names as well, it's just gravy on top.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
finally, like if you overmilled on fairies, you can use Silver Release to fix your own graveyard, which is nice. That's not something you can do with, you know, Master
yeah.
Restrict.
Yeah, it's a little
And
flexible there, so it's pretty
yeah,
nice.
yeah. I guess Iron Wall was another card I was testing before, but I didn't really like Iron Wall because against Vayu they can just Raikou pop it. And I was thinking of Iron Wall for Amaryllis. If they flip Fiend Comedian, then like Iron Wall was a great counter to that, but I just thought the matchup wasn't that frequent to justify playing it. And yeah, you know, Iron Wall kind of is annoying for hero frogs, but they still have Junk, they still have Ryza, they still have Malicious Edge, and that's like enough pressure.
Yeah, like those decks are
And
kind of like multi-dimensional, or try to be. So like just like one common floodgate's not gonna stop them. Really.
yeah, so I just preferred Silver Release for that. And I think I kind of anticipated KristyaSworn was going to get a bit more popular. So obviously Silver Release is crazy in a mirror. Like I think anytime someone Silver Released me personally, like I always lost the game. And yeah, we're ready for the mirror.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. I didn't see it in this tournament, but and we had MST in a second My Body. Second My Body is mostly for like Black Wings, but you can bring in again against like stuff like Dragon Turbo, I guess, to stop the Lightning Vortex. Mirror match for the Herald or JD plays and whatnot. So it has like some application there as well.
Yeah, for sure. I find my body like to be way better than Road. As yeah, you can play it. You can commit into Icarus going second with like you hold my body in hand, and then if they end phase my Icarus, you can hit them with my body, and usually they're incentivized to end phase Icarus because if they don't, you could flip Decree on them. And yeah, MST of course is there for random floodgates like Defisher, Oppression. It's also good for hitting Whirlwind, stuff like that, Light Imprisoning, Skill Drain. And yeah, we're playing 2 Dust instead of 2 Decree. Definitely a bit more controversial, but the reason was, first of all, Dust is better into Vayu than Decree, just because it's chainable. And the only traps you... Obviously, Decree stops DDV, but I think in the Blackwing matchup, you know, Dust, you hit Whirlwind, and I found I was losing a lot more games because I had Decree and I couldn't sucker Whirlwind. Whereas, you know, we already have double my body for Icarus, so having Dust to hit Whirlwind is like pretty good in my opinion. Especially because some Blackwing lists are citing Raikou now, so if your Decree gets popped by Raikou, all their traps are live again, which is kind of annoying. Yeah, I guess I didn't test enough
Yeah.
to see if Twister was better than the two Dusts, but Twister's just so narrow. You know, if they don't have oppression, your Twister is dead, and whereas Dust can still clear like a Solemn or something.
And
And
yeah, in our
yeah,
games with Blackwing versus like this deck, because I was on Blackwing, you were on playing this deck. Like Decree only seemed good with the combination of Orb against Blackwing, because like, you can still resolve Whirlwinds, and then you have no defense pretty much when you have Decree up. So you kind of just let Blackwings have free reign to go all in, uh, so you can't
yeah. I mean,
activate
obviously,
Roar or
obviously the
anything.
Korean Orb is really good, but you don't always establish
Yeah,
it, and also like this deck really needs beckoning and even T-Roar post side. So like Decree conflicts with those cards sometimes, which is a bit annoying. And yeah, like I found my win rate against Blackwing when I was on Dust rather than Decree. Like it really didn't make that much of a difference. So yeah, like I thought it was fine because Dust Tornado is much better into um, Vayu. It's also much better into Amaryllis because you can hit yeah, Miracle Fertilizer, you can hit Mark of the Rose. So yeah, I just like that utility.
yeah,
And you know, sometimes when you're playing something like zombies, you don't know if they'll bring in Light Imprisoning or Skill Drain. So obviously it's really risky to side in Decree, but you can side in like an MST and a Dust and probably be fine, you know?
yeah. Yeah, Dust is just like just a little more flexible overall and doesn't make you like not activate your traps, which I kind of see like these kind of decks having troubles with. I see watch matches and just be like chilling like with Decree with their traps that they still had in the main deck because they're bringing Decree in with their traps, so it's kind of just funny. Uh, I guess Decree would have been nice against like I played against Chamburn in this tournament, so it would have been nice there, but that was like the only
Yeah,
time I would
yeah.
have missed it.
But I think overall, I do kind of like Dust over
Yeah,
Decree for the matchups.
yeah, definitely. Uh, and we played 2 Roll Oppression. This card was probably like the MVP of the sideboard this tournament, just because I played against a lot of special summon heavy decks like dragons, quick draw, sabers. So it was pretty good against all those guys, and some of them don't even expect it to be coming. So
Yeah, which is kind of weird. I mean, I think it's pretty common sense to expect Lightsworn to have oppression, but it's just so good against a lot of your weaker matchups, especially like GBs.
yeah,
I think
GB too.
if you don't have 2 oppression, the GB matchup is actually really hard to beat. And oh, I guess GB is also another matchup where Dust Tornado is better. Because
Oh
Decree
yeah,
just gets popped by Bestiary, so you really want your plays to
yeah.
go through there.
It's kind of similar to like how Dragon Turbo is in a sense with like Dust Tornadoes and Oppressions and how we side with
Yeah,
those. And
yeah, and just oppression is just lights out in the mirror against Dragon Turbo. So I think those unfair decks are, seeing more play now as they should be, and oppression is just great coverage for that.
And to round out the sideboard, we had Trap Dust Shoot and Mirror Force. Dust Shoot was just again against more of this unfair decks, maybe Frogs too, because they have a big hand. And then Mirror Force, like we said before, is the main deck threatening roars, so they're gonna think, hey, that's a roar set, and then lo and behold, it's a Mirror Force. So you kind of punish them that way.
Yeah, it's kind of like playing Mirror Force and Frogs, right? Like they have so many trainables, you feel bad for hitting it, but obviously you're gonna have to play in a Mirror Force, and same concept here, right? It's just insane.
Yeah. Never really. I had like one good, or maybe a couple of good Mirror Forces, but nothing like insane. Maybe I just didn't see as much, but yeah, that kind of rounds up the deck. Do you want to add anything else to before we wrap things up?
Not really. I mean, there's I guess it could be another video or something, but
Yeah.
like I considered so many different options in the side before, things like Breaker, Ryo, stuff like that. But I thought they were kind of mid overall,
Yeah. Just
just
more,
because
more
this deck is
normal summons.
yeah, this deck is so normal summon reliant, and I've seen a lot of replays of Lightsworn decks running out non-engine cards, and just defeats the purpose of the deck, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to get my mills going. Like if you're not a name, if you're not a fairy, like what are you doing, right?
Yeah.
It's just yeah. Um, yeah, like Minecon is something that I was considering before as well. Minecon to take hamsters versus Vayu and just get ahead, but it just felt too inconsistent because if they have Greffer, you don't have any darks to pitch for that. And yeah, I think you want to minimize the variance with the cards you play. Book of Moon is an interesting card that I decided not to play. Obviously, it can be great to flip down Kristya, Vanity, Sphene, Stardust, Kawakami Rodrigo, but like it's a flex spot. You can replace a Vortex for it, but yeah, like if I was playing Aaron, maybe I'd consider one book, and obviously it has some synergies with Raikou and Hamster, but I kind of like the T-Roar Vortex stuff better. And yeah, like Torrential would be a good card to play in the side. Just hard to find a space, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah. Oh, I guess another popular card people play is the Foolish and Avarice in the main and Reincarnation. I was on Reincarnation for a bit in the main and performed alright. It wasn't crazy, but it wasn't like that bad either. It's just an okay card. Avarice was always bad every time I tested it. It was actually crazy. You had to draw it early and you don't have Graveyard Live. Or even when you draw it late, like you don't want to send any of the names back, right? Like you send the stuff back, your stuff's dead. So it just never performed well in my testing. So that was like an easy cut. And Foolish and Card Destruction, you know, Foolish was a card that obviously works with Wolf and 3 Celestia, but I found it played into Oppression and Crow, and I kind of wanted to build to minimize weakness to Crow, because yeah, Crow hits this deck pretty hard. So yeah, and Card Destruction, it's, you know, it performed all right when I was playing it before. I think I would probably entertain playing it again, just because I remember decking you out on Dragon Turbo with Card Destruction, and seeing the Rise of Dragon Turbo, I feel like Card Destruction being a nice win con against them is pretty cool. So yeah, would definitely consider putting one Card Destruction back.
Deck out the
Maybe
mirror.
over, yeah, maybe over like a Gold Sark or something, right? Depending on the meta.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess those are all like the final things. Oh, I guess, so I'm just looking at my like side options right now. The other card I did consider was Needlebug Nest.
Yeah, you were on high on Needlebug for a while there.
Well, I was just trying it out, right?
Yeah.
And just because it's a starter that gets your engine going, you know, Milling Wolves, getting Beckoning Live, that doesn't get hit by DDV. So it's exploring it as a starter, you know, against DDV post-board. You know, you side out some Hamsters, some Raikous, and you don't have anything hit with DDV, you mill Wolves and you go crazy. But it just wasn't that consistent. And I found T-Roar to be way better than Needlebug in terms of keeping you alive and getting those mills. So I guess those are all the things to discuss.
Yeah. Yeah, just like a lot of options you can do with this deck. It's a little underexplored because everyone was just running that same build that did top 12 at that Rivet Rulers, and they're like, they weren't changing anything with the deck or really trying to innovate it a little any, but then everyone just kind of put the deck down. But yeah, I definitely think it's good, and I guess with like people finally getting the confidence to play stuff like Dragon Turbo, and you know, Frogs are still pretty common too. And this deck has like pretty, you know, solid matchups on the Blackwing and Vayu Turbo as well. So like it's not like bad matchups or anything. So yeah, I guess like this deck's bad matchups are just like the weird decks, you can say. Less common decks. But it plays pretty well into the meta, I think.
Yeah, I think it was a good pick, and you did well with it with almost no practice,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
because you definitely misplayed a bunch, and
yeah, stuff. It's like, I guess like the Lightsworn engine is pretty straightforward, but like common things that I messed up a little bit were like heralds, like some herald negates, some beckoning light adds, and then like some Kristya plays. Like those were a little harder to navigate than the rest of the deck. So, but with a little more practice, I'll hopefully get those things worked out. But yeah, again, thanks for joining me and doing this deck profile. And shout out to Team Ring and Destruction that we're both on. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed this deck profile, or you can you know, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, and I'll do a replay video at least, and maybe ProStorm will join as well for that. We'll see. But we'll do a replay of the tournament run and see how things went, and yeah, show everyone how that tournament went. But thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll catch you all in the next one.